Theology in Paradise Lost. When Dr. Johnson writes that in Paradise Lost, the want of human interest is always felt, he overlooked the allegory whereas angel, devil, sin, death, ever, the divine person, convey human insights and experiences. As far as Adam and Eve themselves, they are far from portraying before the fall all it perfect. After all, it is that not. Such passage in book number 8, line number 530 and 588. This proves Johnson's view that human passion did not enter the world before the fall. Milton is well able to render stage of transition from innocence to experience. Indeed, during the fall, Indeed, during the last half century, the poem's psychology has greatly increased critics. Many have required the example just as greatly interested critics. Many have just when temptation begins and when the fall becomes inevitable. This line inquiry, embel, onward has been persuaded so energetically that pre-lapsarian experience has come to look pretty much like the passionate dynamics of ordinary life since the fall. This is so much taken for granted, and the stage of the Adam and Eve corruption, so blurred than their actual first disobedience, has become almost unimportant. It is as if fall or matters already occurred at their separation, and Eve's dream that mattered the moment of Saturn. The Saturn generation preparation for sin and his whisper to his mate. This is not ridiculous. The idea of the gradual fall had vulnerable proponents. True, he was interested in the cause of evil, but his cause was understood in his time. He pushes his inquiry as far as back as may be, carrying the action from the false society of devil sunk in darkness up through confusion, to heaven's clarity foreseen the worst, then through the universe with Satan already subverting it, back to the angel's fall, back to creation of the pristine universe. In BK, the action takes an ultimate point of origin, the mind of God, whose evil's possibility as inevitable bound up the freedom of the creation. Foreseen, even the evil will be chosen. Yet God avoids doing anything to curtail freedom. For Milton, like the Armenian God, is obsessed with a creaturely freedom. Consequently, he locates. True, he was interested in causes of evil, but as cause was understood in this time, he pushes his inquiry as far as may be, carrying the action from the fallen society of devils sunk in darkness, up through confusion, to heaven's clarity foreseen the worse, than through a universe with the Saturn already subverting it, back to the angels, back to creation of the pristine university. Takes an ultimate point origin mind of the God whose evil's possibility and inevitably bound up the freedom of the creation created spirit, foresee even an evil will be chosen. Yet God avoids doing anything to curtail this freedom. Milton's like Armenian God is obsessed with the creaturely freedom. Consequently, he locates choices at the earliest, most fundamental stage imaginable. He puts the possibility of evil not only in Adam as created but in chaos for creation, even in origin of the matter in God. Hence, perhaps Milton's complex triple imagined chaos, uncreated matters of the God-filled, God retreated, yet divine source of the chaos, and in superficial problem of the theology, evils not in evil. However dangerous the ground Milton inquiry invade, ends is always justification. Evil into the mind of God may come and go unapproved. Issues of theodicy have naturally been raised in connection with the motives of the Adam and Eve at fall. Wedlock and emption both exonerate Eve and blame Adam. Why did Raphael not warn Adam before superficially? Why did not? These are the significant events in Paradise Lost. I will talk about the days You know how? Because this is going from day 1 to day 33. And I will give the reference in the book. Okay? Which reference is coming in which book? So you listen it carefully. The one is day 1. The event is Messiah's generation. In the text, you will find it in page number 5, line number 582, 618 and 664. So, in text, book 5, page 582, 618 and 664, Messiah's generation. War in the heaven. Book 5, 642, then book 6, 406, 524, 684 to 6 and 748. In book 5, page 642, book 6, page 406, 524, 684 and 748, War in Heaven. Book 6, 715 and 866, 871, Rebel Angels 9-Day Pursuit. Rebel Angels 9-Day Pursuit, Book 1, line number 50 to 53, 50, 51, 52, 53. Now, Week of Creation, Book 7, line number 131. Book 7, line number 381, Sun and the Moon created, 4th day of the creation crowned. Book 2, line number 348, book 7, line number 550, book 8, line number 229 to 44. Mankind created 6th day of creation. Hell gate bad. Now, pandemonium built in an hour council. So, this is in book 1, line number 697 to 798. Then Satan's Cosmic Prospects, Midnight Conversation with Uriel. Book number 3, line number 555 to 61 and book 4, line number 564. Satan at Eve's ear, his expulsion, midnight, Raphael visit. Book 4, line number 800 to 1015. Then book 9, 48 to 68, week of uncreation, midnight to midnight. In Saturn's re-entry, the fall, noon, Messiah's judgment before sunset. This is in book number 9, 67 to 739, line number. Then book 11, line number 184 and book 12, 589. Michael's visit, sunrise to noon. Why did Raphael not warn Adam before superficially? Why did not God prevent the temptation? These hymns show response to a profound dilemma. Milton presents so tragic action and tragic predicament. What would others expect to find? Adams himself responds. Language and style. We are fortunate to having good stylometric analysis of Paradise Lost together with comparative measurement. Emma, 1964 and 67 use samples too small to support his conclusion, but a sound basis for generalization is laid in Cons. 1990. Milton's syntax is highly unusual, characterized by more frequent embedded clause than can be found in any other canonical 17th century writer. He often mixed left and right branching clause word group before and after what they modify, keeping all in suspension. Long sentences with lower subordination are particularly common, sometimes with longer chains of dependent clause. Yet dramatically short sentences are also unusually common for the time. The speech in particular have a distinctive sentence structure unlike that of any other narrative poet of the century, but closely resembling that of Milton's own conversational prose, on which see Cons. 1982, they are able to engage difficult issues at the edge of speculation. One naturally associates This elaborate yet improvising syntax with the use of frequently in embedded blank words sequence. Page number 10 to 49. It both takes and gives pleasure in the successful resolving of the complexity and distinction alternatives or precipitating ambiguities. Turning to diction, one finds frequent coordination conjunction. This is a consequence of Milton's many fine discrimination, obliquely introduced qualifications ultimately for the sentence structure itself. Negotiating between energetic movement, fluent and continuous, and perpetual afterthoughts, interposition, correcting, dividing, and words of truth, Milton was modern in diction and accidents, avoiding obsolescence, verb termination. He was modern too in his narrative ranging in time and space. And this sudden changes in perspective, see J.R. Mulder, D. J.R. Mulder in 1991. Inevitably, this called for a composite diction varying with topic and yana. With the local decorum, various style, she written on occasion, Milton resorts to democratic verse, but in general, he does so less often than in the prose and much less than in his early prose. Perhaps he abandoned the demotic when he lost faith in the good sense of the people. H.S. Davis in Watson. The variance of the diction with Yanar makes it hard to generalize. The Greek mod, however, appears so frequently as to be almost pervasively qualifying or even standing against heroic aspiration. Appropriately, therefore, there are unexpected many technical words in his prose. Indeed, Milton pursues a treatable smoothness, an ideal that may seem to work against strange diction, technical terms, and unfamiliar proper names. Neither do I care to wrinkle the smoothness of history with rugged name places unknown. In Paradise Lost, however, Ronsard's more than even in early Dryden, although they may not seem obviously technical. For example, bordered, and they may be overlaid by technical ambiguities like wave and dropped. Many critics have noticed the frequent exotic name Georgic to the local decorum, like the ontomatopoetic liquid consequence, fry innumerable discussed by D.K. McCulley in Bennett. Among Milton's thematic words, several should be regarded as Georgic, fruit, seed, wandering, and C. B. Rajan, especially a law. Descriptive studies of the style of Paradise Lost have replaced the polemic of F.R. Lewis' scrutiny, 1993, page number 123 to 36. Milton's monotonously ritualistic verse incompatible with sharp, concrete realization. T.S. Eliot's in this British Academy lecture of 1947, Eliot admitted his attack had been direct against Milton's influence rather than his poetry. His self-interested culture war against Georgian rivals was wholly destructive so far as Milton's criticism is concerned. H. Howarth, pernicious in its subsequent influence, Eliot's criticism was bad in itself, dogmatic like Lewis and unsupported by plausible demonstration. More sensitive account of Milton's style may be found in Lewis and Rich, the last showing Lewis wrong by his own criteria. The most notorious feature of the style of Paradise Lost is Latinity. Already Jonathan Richardson comment Milton's language is English, but it's Milton's language. Tis Latin, tis Greek English, not only in the words and phraseology, the transposition, but the ancient idiom is seen all his heights. That is Derbyshire. Also writes on page number 313, and the publication is 1932. Even this far from Eliot's negative reaction to the remoteness of Milton's verse from the ordinary speech, we should recall that Milton time intellectuals spoke Latin, thought in Latin, and wrote private notes and Latin words. To call Paradise Lost Latinate may only mean that it's intellectually engaged and intimately expressive. In sentence structure, at least, has little is neoclassical about it. English structure, loose rather than periodic paradise, practices as much as syntactic. The words paragraph seldom keep one waiting for the sense. The sense is diffused throughout a large block of words than is common. Often there are momentary stopping places from which thought darts in aforesaid said. Each new phrase may show a syntactic scheme inferred earlier to be wrong of man's first disobedience and fruit consequence passes of the forbidden, suggesting also physical fruit. So sustained a syntactic breathe convey a strong sense of passion and thought in passion. It is no ordinary syntax, but it is not extraordinary in a manner foreign to the genius of English. If built order and a flowing mass of the verse paragraph are classical, to the classical in the sense is surely virtue. On a smaller scale, many phrases have a Greek, Italian, or specially Latin structure. If Milton were attempting to appropriate the linguistic qualities of all Europe and neutralize them in single, universally intelligible pre-Babylonian utterances, Louis 1942 thought the Latinism justified by the freedom of words order they secured, and it is best the words order and its own poetic reasons. Still, Milton would naturally prefer his poetic syntax to have the additional validation of the ancient or the other customary usage. Frequent omission of the article, like the occasional use of after and past particle, after haven't seen, produced an effect is the first concise, spare, and pungent, and only secondarily Latin construction are particularly common in transition, where they suggest an authoritative narrative and the ordinance of a magisterial poet. As much as anything, the frequent inversion have seen a support to change of the idiosyncratic remoteness, but the word order of Milton time now understood to have been much free than ours. Prince 1945 sensitively analyzed many characteristic invasions and relate them to contemporary literary practice to the disposition of the epithet to in Italian poetic diction, example in adjective, noun, and adjective. Emma, working with inadequate samples, rare suppose the rare subject object verb version, her unadmonished golden trees were to be commenced are common object subject verb and verb subject. Then the Latin sense primary and a new English apart from the compound like unfumed. Milton seldom makes coinage or imports words from other languages. Probably exceptions include omnifis, recline, and then cons. The Latin sense primary but occurring in English context, so called a gratuitous diction. Most Milton's alleged Latinism fall in brand for they may not have seen notice as much as in time, and many and more than we think of aspiring as German and Latinate. Thus, to bear a rule which was part and parcel, called the Thomas Newton, pure Latinism had long been good English. 6 instances, and there are number of other examples. If a Latin derived uses in Paradise Lost occur early in ordinary prose, I do not call it Latinism, but simply gloss it in falling within a range of 17th century English meaning. Milton readers would know many etymologies, true or false, but unless the Latin derivations are relevant in some way, foregrounded for irony, they hardly concern more reasons. So I have ignored many ghost Latinism and allowed the diction intimacy to reassert itself. Paradise Lost is the most direct secondary speech. In fact, Paradise of Latin has obscured. In Milton, however, I may have put this position so sparkly, subsequently criticism, especially Cons, has indeed confirmed my main contention, but needed to be qualified in view of Latin species' role in bilingual culture. For Milton's first audience, Latin associations would have come readily in mind, although to note among a Latinism in the ordinary sense, they should keep in mind Milton's language is fully English but also more than English. If Latinism have been overestimated, so the ambiguities and the ironies. There are many of such efforts, so may in fact constitute a characteristic style and individual rhetoric. Unfortunately, that he made critics focus on them. I myself did in Milton. We can how afford to detect local ironies less automatically. To effect, I have in mind range from a momentarily apprehended double syntax, possible ironies, puns, and radical ambiguities, challenging choices in the order. Double syntax occur in the word group and taken main of the occurs another. In beginning, may fleeting be attached to readers make a better connection with rows inversion and affect local occurrences. As such, double syntax has further role in drowning out a sense through the paragraph. One is led by the fluent movement of the phrase relating to first retrospectively, then prospectively. The syntactic Correction correction is not so emphatic as to constitute full ambiguity. If it is noticed, all and alternatively are likely to seem trivial and illusionary. Milton's puns related topics are elaborately but not exhaustively treated by Lee Comet. Many takes the form of unassertive ambiguities foregrounded, all departs from the vigilance in which they would be considered. The poem allusion have occasioned energetic controversies so complex are intertextualities of biblical, classical, and Renaissance texts. Here, the best guide includes him and D. Bush in Milton, especially on the echoes of the psalm. The number of allusions in Paradise Lost has been exaggerated by the critics, forgetting how recently the device has been introduced in English literature. Vernacular allusion was rare, and only a few classical authors would have been familiar enough for the intertextuality to be recognizable. Still, one may allow that Ovid, Horace, and Virgil, particularly in Georgics, fell into special category, and of course, allusions to the Bible was a readily available sources. Many knew the Psalms and the much else to be both in Latin and English. In any event, modern readers easily read past the allusion and echoes. These may positively challenge discussion between subtle yet sharply distinguished moral alternative, tuned in all here new utterances. Either Adam and Satan, Derbyshire add a brace of common to make the sense clear, but Adam and Satan sharing the pronoun can seemingly highly effective if recalls other passages where Satan takes Adam's place. A more obvious instance in Satan's soliloquizing address Adam and Eve. If ambiguities challenge discrimination, the small almost all its Milton have lived through the vogue and witty tropes of conceit, so it is not surprising that should engage his reader sternously in his era. Either critiques of the similes were sometimes content to see oasis of refreshment as Homeric epic simile. Dr. Johnson says Milton's great excellence is amplitude, and he expands the advantageous image beyond the dimensions which the occasion requires. One might still be inclined to continue on that of the enjoyment for digressiveness. After all, its feature for the poem's current georgic mode. The closer study has made it difficult to retain context and simple approach. See J. Wheeler in The Paradise Lost. And then there are other writers, for example, Widmer, R. D. Bedford, L. Georgeson, and then N. Harris. The main problem with the similes is that the ground of resemblance between their tenors and vehicle often seems tenuous or elusive. Milton does not confine himself with the limits of rigorous comparison. This can hardly be accidental in the view of the rhetoricism, high valuation of antipodesis or strict analogical correspondence. A doctrine has consequently developed that Milton used simile with clear sense of the fact and exactly there may be disparity in the smile relating to Saturn, whereas the travesties goodness and example discuss for more often, however, Milton similes are conjunctive but difficult. One will be required to discriminate between right and wrong, perhaps to supply income illusion. Saturn looks up at heaven, gate is compared to Jacob. The stairs were such as whereon Jacob saw angels ascending and descending, bands of guardian bride when he fled to Paddan Aram in field of Luz, dreaming by night under the open sky, and waking cried, "This is gates of heaven." Strictly speaking, the comparison is between the two flights of the stairs, not between Saturn and Jacob, who might be very different without the simile being adjective. Even between them, however, deeper grounds of the similarity can be discovered. Both have sinned, both have tried to evade a retribution, and both evasion the scale nature. With the symbolism of the ascent and critical turning point, disparity lies in the fruit and the turn different ways. Jacob to repentance, Saturn to harden his heart, a main item of the vehicle, namely the biographical occasion of Jacob's dream, is only implied. Many similes in Paradise Lost belong to this type, where the vehicle is partly suppressed or depend on compressed illusion. A good example would be the simile cluster. Several of the notes below attempt to identify such implied elements and reduce the number of disjunctive simile. Another difficulty with Milton's simile lies in their varieties and logical complexity. There are comparison with the comparison and comparison in negative form, double and triple vehicle, and even double attenors. Sometimes this complexity results from comparison. Milton has much to say. Elsewhere, it serves the ideological purge and when it need to wield some heterodox theology or a political doctrine or relate to the comparison to the moral vision. Most often, perhaps, the simile serves as exercise in discriminating judgment, said George Son. The same is true of the other stylistic feature, even individual words and are deployed. Much criticism has been devoted to attentive, exhaustive, not to say remorseless listing of the occurrences of certain keywords to bring out the strategy of their placement, associations, sequences, and like. Whether following or preceding the fall, whether use of Saturn or Adam. Among the most notable of such studies are Saturn, McCaffrey 1959, Cope 1962, Rick 1963, and Anne Forsyth 1987. It is a rich vein. Almost any word in Paradise Lost must prove susceptible to the treatment. It is too unified a poem, and when suscepticism has been allowed, when it has been pointed out that in any work or the fall, words like fall and rise are bound to be significant, like beetroot in the book on root vegetable. Thanks are still due to the theme's detective of retracing the poet's steps so faithfully. There are many genius key words in Paradise Lost whose study has put in beyond doubt that Milton chose and arranged words with the extraordinary sustained awareness of the ideological implications. It is characteristics, for example, that he should only use guiltless in the non moral sense, guiltless of fire immediately before the fall. The Jonathan Richardson put it well when they wrote that a reader of Milton must be always upon duty. He is surrounded with sense and rises. Every word is in prose and there are no lazy intervals. All has been considered and demand merits observations. Derbyshire, 1932. Thematic words are most interested when they are associated with objects or even in the story. Naturally, the theme Milton most attended it would be accorded more than verbal statement. So that studied of the keyword often turned to be studied of image and object too, like Mindel, a searching exploration of balance. Similarly, with the word and theme introduced in the very first line, fruit, whose association have been found to include no small proportion of the poem's content. See Christopher 1982. They range through accounts of their fall consequences, fruit in abstract, many occurrences of fruit itself, literal and figurative, well, fruitless and fruition and a frequent reference to vegetative nature. Eve is herself a fairest unsupported flower. Christ promised to is to her seed fallen, angel like leaves. The serpent is a shoot of fraud, and under the convent mankind a form and a second stop. But none of would matter so much were in not for the actual trees that dominates the poem's landscape. The sacred biblical trees of the life and knowledge, emblematic trees and plants of virtue, ordinary savage wilderness, one continued break that formed the framing everywhere paradise vegetation luxuriantly. It seems only reasonable that the universe itself should be brought of a plant whose bright consummate flower breathe in heaven. As naturally mankind is a part and partner of the plant, so the misuse of the plant disobeying and sovereign planters must necessarily have fruit or cosmic consequences. A part of Milton's vocabulary that has attracted much attention is that proper names. Eliot Leaves treated the roll calls of the name as having only a vague atmosphere and auditory value, but more recent study of the historical and theological context has shown that virtually every name, every naming, every narrative or spatial deployment of the name is sharply edged. For example, each devil has two names: true innocence name in heaven, now blotted out and withheld, and new dialogistic name after the Anglic fall. The letter is assigned by the Raphael, Saturn so called now, for foreseen to be used further or heaven calls. They were, although no men, various names. Names analyze and signify. Saturn is equal to adversary. Adam and Eve naming of the natural species carries implications about their wisdom, scientific knowledge, and power. Latin nomen mean noun as well as name. Changes in the nomenclature, often the fall, may be seen as a particular instances of the danger degeneration of language in general. So, and even our innocent Latinism before the fall. Much criticism show appreciations of this strategy, especially Rick and Everett. Both, but knowledge itself is entirely new footing in Leonard. Explain the continent logic with Milton orders almost all introduction of the name throughout his poem. Milton's brilliance is nowhere more active than in his aforesaid manners of deploying materials for simultaneous effect. He will generally avoid senti Cententei then decisively concentrate on the BK before the fatal separation, not delivering them. Adam disposition and what's the foreground them helps to establish the tragic mode and illustrate Adam's attempt at moral authority. Words or with currently serve grammatically, rhetorical, and topomorphic ends. Thus, many have noticed local decorum of the mimetic grammar. Already, Jonathan Richardson's remarked how the grammar mimics Satan's hesitation on a brink of chaos into this world, followed not to be plunged, and lines disruption. Word is treated and drawn. Delayed many words expected in this issue. Equally elusive, but for different reason, is the rhetorical organization. This was once a chief glory, but rhetoric is so aligned to the ways of modern education that an attempt to cultivate appreciation of it would be uphill work. Perhaps the most to be hoped for it a vague recognition of operation to token instant. Identifying all the figure would be not only pedantic but ignorant. Rhetoric aim at the response for the discriminating than mere recognize. How is often now to appreciate and significantly unusual frequency of the figure or topical aptness of that. An example of which one can be fairly sure come in BK that figures like pun, considered low and liable to excess, are concentrated. The in doctrum here paradoxically is appropriate to the subject wild work for the angelic war. The main scheme here largely scale repetition. The song's pattern is carried to extraordinary levels, never content merely to list name or items. Milton invariably orders them, making the array significant. Here Eve considered paradise in 6 phrases, number of perfection, arranging them sestina wise in answering pairs. Breathe of breath of mom and her rising, sun and showers, evening and night. This array is repeated in the periodic epithet but with variations: sweet, pleasant, fragrant, sweet. 5 epithets. Throughout Paradise Lost, the topomorphic or spatial patterns may be found, often employing symbolism or sovereignty, not of course to dignify human monarchy, but rather to affirm Christ's kingship and moral hierarchy of creation. In the roll call of Eastern empires, for example, the names do more than sounds out exotic grandeur. They honor the centrally placed of here symbols of the messianic sovereignty. I will make a man more precious than the golden wedge of Ophir, the vast of African principalities. Repeat the pattern. The Cephala, thought of Ophir. Sovereign centers, even brief landscape description, are similarly structured. For example, ye hill and dales, ye rivers, wood and plains, where the virtuous rivers of paradise are dignified. So this is how we were discussing about the style and the language of Paradise Lost, how the themes are being deployed, then the deploying materials, individual words are there, and then the fight between Saturn and Jacob, similes, ambiguities, intertextuality, and the style, irony is there, and then Latinity, Latinism. So, in this way, these are the language variants Paradise Lost is using. Please subscribe the channel Dr. Anju Gurawa. Share, forward this video to your friends and write me a comment if you find how else, what other topics we can take. Thank you so much.